Hi guys. The one that I'm gonna read today is called Zen Shorts by John J. Muth. I chose this one just because it was my favorite of this module's books. I just thought it was a really cute book. It has really cute pictures, good message. Um, and it has kind of an Asian culture reference, so I just really enjoyed it. It's a story about friendship. It's about a panda who befriends some kids, three siblings. And there's kind of stories within the story, little like life lessons that the panda is teaching the kids. And it just has really pretty illustrations, and overall, it's just a good story. So that's the one I'm gonna read. Michael, there's a bear outside, said Carl. A what? Called Michael. A bear. He's really big, and he's in the backyard. What's he doing? Michael asked. He's sitting. He has an umbrella, said Carl. An umbrella? By the time the boys got outside, their sister Addie was already talking with him. I'm sorry for arriving unannounced, said the bear. The wind carried my umbrella all the way from my backyard to your backyard. I thought I would retrieve it before it became a nuisance. He spoke with a slight panda accent. Michael introduced himself. Then Addie introduced Carl because Carl was shy around bears he didn't know. And this is how Addie, Michael, and Carl met Stillwater. The next day, Addie went to have tea with Stillwater. Hello, Addie said as she stepped inside. Come in, a faraway voice called. Then she heard the voice say, Oh, yes, come out, come out. Stillwater was in the backyard. He was in a tent. This is a birthday present from my Uncle Rye, Stillwater said. He always gives presents on his birthday to celebrate the day he was born. I like it so much that I'm not staying in my house right now. Stillwater invited Addie to sit with him. You brought me some cake, said Stillwater. That was very nice of you. Is it your birthday? He asked. No, said Addie. It's not mine either, said Stillwater. But let me give you a gift for my uncle's birthday. I will tell you a story. Uncle Rye and the Moon. My Uncle Rye lived alone in a small house up in the hills. He didn't own many things. He lived a simple life. One evening, he discovered he had a visitor. A robber had broken into the house and was rummaging through my uncle's few belongings. The robber didn't notice Uncle Rye, and when my uncle said hello, the robber was so startled he almost fell down. My uncle smiled at the robber and shook his hand. Welcome, welcome. How nice of you to visit. The robber opened his mouth to speak, but he couldn't think of anything to say. Because Rye never lets anyone leave empty-handed, he looked around the tiny hut for a gift for the robber. But there was nothing to give. The robber began to back toward the door. He wanted to leave. At last, Uncle Rye knew what to do. He took off his only robe, which was old and tattered. Here, he said, please take this. The robber thought my uncle was crazy. He took the robe, dashed out the door, and escaped into the night. My uncle sat and looked at the moon, its silvery light spilling over the mountains, making all things quietly beautiful. Poor man, lamented my uncle. All I had to give him was my tattered robe. If only I could have given him this wonderful moon. Your uncle sounds nice, said Addie. I don't think I could have given away my only robe. I know how that is, said Stillwater, but there's always the moon. That was a good story, said Addie. Thank you, said Stillwater, and this is good cake. Thanks, said Addie. I made it myself. The next day, Michael went to see Stillwater. Here I am, Stillwater called from the tree. Can I come up? Asked Michael. If you're careful, said Stillwater. What if we could fly? Said Michael. We could cast shadows on clouds, said Stillwater. But what if we fell? Said Michael. If we fell, we might break something, said Stillwater. That would be bad, said Michael. Maybe, said Stillwater. Maybe, added Michael. The farmer's luck. There was once an old farmer who had worked his crops for many years. One day his horse ran away. Upon hearing the news, his neighbors came to visit. Such bad luck, they said sympathetically. Maybe, the farmer replied. The next morning the horse returned, bringing with it two other wild horses. Such good luck, the neighbors exclaimed. Maybe, replied the farmer. The following day his son tried to ride one of the untamed horses, was thrown off, and broke his leg. Again, the neighbors came to offer their sympathy on his misfortune. Such bad luck, they said. Maybe, answered the farmer. The day after that, military officials came to the village to draft young men into the army to fight in a war. Seeing that the son's leg was broken, they passed him by. Such good luck, cried the neighbors. Maybe, said the farmer. I get it, said Michael. Maybe good luck and bad luck are all mixed up. You never know what will happen next. Yes, Stillwater agreed. You never know. The day after that, Carl went to visit Stillwater. Michael said I couldn't bring over our stuff to go swimming. I'm mad at Michael. He's always telling me what to do, so I brought everything. Said Stillwater. It's a little pool. I don't know if all those things will fit. Let's see, Carl said. Let's see, said Stillwater. Stillwater looked at the pool. The things can go swimming, but we can't, he said. I brought too much stuff, said Carl. That's okay. I'll help you carry it home later. Why does Michael always have to tell me what to do? Carl said. If he were here, I would climb up really high, and I would jump on him like this, and I'd do a big smash like this. Later, Carl and Stillwater had tea. Carl, said Stillwater, you spent the whole day being angry with Michael. Did you notice how much fun we had? Carl watched the steam rise from his cup. I'm sorry I brought all this stuff, Carl said. You don't need to be sorry. Right now you need to carry. Hold on tight and I'll tell you a story. A heavy load. 2 traveling monks reached a town where there was a young woman waiting to step out of her sedan chair. The rains had made deep puddles, and she couldn't step across without spoiling her silken robes. She stood there looking very cross and impatient. She was scolding her attendants. They had nowhere to place the packages they held for her, so they couldn't help her across the puddle. The younger monk noticed the woman, said nothing, and walked by. The older monk quickly picked her up and put her on his back, transported her across the water, and put her down on the other side. She didn't thank the older monk. She just shoved him out of the way and departed. As they continued on their way, the young monk was brooding and preoccupied. After several hours, unable to hold his silence, he spoke out. That woman back there was very selfish and rude, but you picked her up on your back and carried her. Then she didn't even thank you. I set the woman down hours ago, the older monk replied. Why are you still carrying her? Do you think you've carried it long enough? Asked Stillwater. Yes, said Carl. Good, said Stillwater. And this is how Addie, Michael, Carl, and Stillwater became friends. So that is that book. The next one I had was The Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats. So this book was published in 1962, and it's considered one of the first picture books that portrays a multicultural setting, which I did not know beforehand. It explains that in the back of the book when it talks about the author. And it's still a really important book in children's literature. And it's just a very simple, easy read that's perfect for like younger age kids, like early childhood age. The next one was this book, Just a Minute, a trickster tale and counting book. This book highlights quite a few really important topics that are good for kids to learn about. The first being Mexican culture. It highlights like the whole thing is about Mexican culture. It highlights Mexican foods, all of the color of Mexican culture. The pictures are really bright, really vibrant colors and drawings. And it has Spanish words throughout. So that's always good. And it is a counting book, which is great for kids who are just learning how to count, to practice counting. It goes 1 through 10. And it also counts in Spanish, which I think is really a really cool thing. And I think it's something that's important for young kids to learn. I feel like I didn't learn that until I was quite a bit older. So I think if it were incorporated into like elementary age, I think that would be really beneficial, learning a little bit of Spanish. I guess it just depends on where you go to school, but and it also touches on the importance of family and being together, and also how to have patience a little bit. So it's a really, really good book, a good counting book. The next one is Madlenka by Peter Siss. I really recommend this book for everyone. I think every teacher should read this book to their class. It talks about a bunch of different locations in the world and the cultures that they have there, such as France, India, Germany, Italy, Latin America, Egypt, and Asia. That is so much for a kid to be exposed to in just one book. So I think it's super important. They are able to learn about the foods, certain places within these countries, animals that live there, and so much more about these countries. And I just think it's so important for students to learn about different places than where they live and how to embrace different cultures. And this book does a really good job of that. It also just has really cool illustrations that show off like the different cultures and countries, and just the overall layout is very cool within the book, and it's all about a girl losing her tooth. So I think it's a really great book. And then the last one picture book I had was The Wall, also by Peter Siss. I read this one on YouTube. This book takes place during the Cold War, and it describes life during that time. It's the actual author, Peter Siss. It's his experience living behind the Iron Curtain, because he really did live through it. It's very informative, and it's a great read if kids are interested in learning about the Iron Curtain and just the Cold War in general. It has really good illustrations, and it really depicts life at that time. I don't know if it's super like relevant or necessary for young kids. I think it could be a little confusing or kind of like overwhelming. But if a kid is interested in that topic, if they're interested in learning about the Cold War or anything, I think it's a great pick if they were interested in that. So, yeah. Then we have A Boy Called Bat by Alana K. Arnold. I really, really loved this book, first of all. But I'm going to answer starting with question number 4 that says, how would you describe the text's portrayal of autism and its effects on the individual, family, school, community, all of that? I think it pretty accurately describes autism. Autism can affect people in different ways, just depends on the person. Some are more high functioning than others. But I think the book describes kind of like a typical experience that some can have and symptoms that they can have, symptoms that are kind of common. Bat flaps his arms when he's anxious or when he's getting kind of agitated or angry. He's sensitive to noise, so he resorts to wearing earmuffs, like at school or in situations where he's uncomfortable. He struggles socially, and he has a hard time connecting with people at times, so I do think that it's a realistic look at autism. Bat has some good quotes where he's very blunt, because sometimes he doesn't realize that he needs a filter, and that he shouldn't say some things. On page 113, Lawrence is telling Bat that he can help him with the animal's baths, and he can tell him when he's using too much soap. And Bat says, "That's easy, you always use too much soap." And then another one, on page 120, Bat was saying to Janie how the fact he was saying about skunks was really interesting. And he said, "Don't you think it's really interesting?" And Janie said, "I think theater is way more interesting than animals." And Bat responded with, "That's stupid." But yeah, overall, I do think it's a realistic portrayal. It shows kind of like the inner struggles that Bat has with autism and the frustrations that Bat's sister and his family can feel at times with his behavior. The way his autism is handled at school, how his teacher deals with him and gives him breaks and things like that, and how it affects making friends and building relationships in general. And then to answer question number 5, do you think the book is trying to accomplish too much? It deals with autism, family dynamics, friendship, divorce, animals, and more. I do think the book covers a lot, but I don't really think it's too overwhelming. I think this book could connect with so many different kids and families regarding so many different topics. And so if a kid has autism and reads this book, he could feel a sense of like belonging or connection somehow. If the parents of a kid who has autism reads it and feels a sort of connection, if a kid is struggling with divorce